Well, welcome in, folks, to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone, joined by Rise and Draft, Mr. Ryan Roberts, and Alex Gilstrap, part of riseanddraft.com. If you're looking for fantastic NFL draft coverage, as well as a mock draft simulator and a great database for draft prospect information. Also a part of the Believe Podcast Network, the number one podcast network for professionals. So today we are going to do the flip of our last topic on our last discussion show, which was letdowns so far during the cycle. And we decided to be a bit more positive on this episode, and it's going to be players that have been big surprises that might be in that top 100 conversation, maybe even higher. We're going to get to that super soon, though. Before we do, folks, I just want to remind you to check out Bet Online. The season is almost halfway through for college football and the NFL. And as always, Bet Online is your number one spot for all of your pro and college football action this season. With a new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, Bet Online continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to sign up to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your bonus. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all of the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, guys, we're going to be a bit more positive. We've got more names to go through today. Ryan, as always, tried to fit 60 in one show, but he's not admitting to it. But we've got a lot of really fun guys to talk about, and I think a number of these are players who just really popped up onto the scene and are going to be people that you need to be aware of come the start of the actual draft cycle. And Ryan, I want to head to you first with a South Carolina player, Kingsley Enagbare, who has looked fantastic so far on a pretty bad South Carolina team. It's tough to stand out on a struggling SEC team. But why did you go with Kingsley Enagbare?
Well, in the summer, I think I talked about him in the summer too. He was a guy that I wanted to like a ton, and there was just something about him that I couldn't buy fully into. He's got the 6'4 plus, the 250, 260, somewhere in that ballpark. He's got the 34 plus inch arms. And he's an explosive athlete, man, who's got some nice hip flexion. He can bend and he can run the outside track. And there's some big upside as a pass rusher. But in his 2020 film, I was just like, man, he is such a liability in the run game. Like he cannot set an edge. He's getting displaced out of gaps all over the place. So I ended up with a 4th round grade on him, just strictly based upon the traits. Like that was, I was as high as I can give him, just because it wasn't just that he was like below average in the run game. Like he was poor. He was about as bad as I've watched over the summer as far as defending the run at defensive end position. But this year has been a lot better. He's really been able to unlock his length. His core looks a lot stronger. So now we're adding in some ability as a run defender in early downs to make somewhat of an impact, at least be solid in that area. So if we're talking solid to plus in the run game combined with the traits that he has as a pass rusher, this kid's going top 100. I think this kid could go first round if he's consistent in the run game, because I think he has the traits to be a high volume pass rusher. He does. You could sell me on him being 8 to 11 sack a year guy from a athletic trait standpoint. And if he's a good run defender, just solid, because I comped him in the summer to Olivier Vernon for the Cleveland Browns. It was kind of the same thing coming on Miami. He was a nice athlete, inconsistent. The flashes were there. Olivier Vernon turns himself into a really solid all-around football player, and at the end of his career, he's a good run defender. It's not just that he's good. So I think that Enagbare has a good upside. I think he looks the part for sure, and the fact that he's become a more consistent run defender, I think that he has a better floor than I anticipated, and I think he still has a substantial upside as a pass rusher.
Yeah, I think the best point you made with Enagbare coming into 2021 and how things have differed for him so far is, look, coming into the season, we weren't sure that you would be able to deploy him except on certain, pass rush situations, 3rd and long, stuff like that. But here, like you said, You see a more well-rounded game with him, the ability to run the game, play against the run better than he did in years past. I think a lot of that is he looks a little bigger, first of all. He looks like he's put on some weight, which does help him. But I think he's just kind of understood, how to get the right angles and how to, cut off the edge and make plays in two-gap, against outside zone. I haven't watched too much of him, film-wise to this point, but I did watch him, obviously, against Georgia live. And I think there were 2 or 3 times he made rushing stops. So that's something that, against an offensive line like Georgia, who brings the beef for, a college football program, he found success, especially on those outside running plays, to be able to close off the edge and then, use that strength, that added strength I think he added in, over the offseason to be able to get free, get his hands free and make stops in the run game. So like you said, more well-rounded play leads to you feeling more comfortable about his projection to play a more prominent role at the next level.
And I think in my scale, I listed him as a plus, like a good backup, a good rotational player. And that's kind of to your point, Alex. It's like he has the upside, at least in the summer, of being a pass rush specialist who can affect third downs. But he graded a little lower because I just didn't see an every down potential player. But now I think that I'm seeing a guy that is a potential starting caliber football player who still has the upside as a pass rusher. So we're just talking about becoming a more well-rounded football player. The ceiling was never the issue with a guy like Enagbare. The question was the floor. And now he's showing that there is a more substantial floor than there was before.
So we've got a lot of defenders on this list. I'm looking at it now, and it's kind of funny it's shaped out that way. Almost makes me wonder we should have just broken it up by offense and defense. But Alex, the guy that you wanted to highlight first as a big surprise is linebacker Devin Lloyd from Utah, who has looked really good so far this season. I actually ended up getting to see him in person yesterday. I ended up going to the USC-Utah game just on a whim, and man, USC is absolutely terrible. That's a separate issue. But so far this season, 53 tackles. He has 2 sacks to his name. He also has 2 interceptions. This is a guy who's performed pretty well so far this season. Why did you go with Devin Lloyd as your surprise riser, your first one?
Well, to your point about defenders over, offensive players in this week's episode, I feel like on Twitter, we always talk offensive players. It's easy to talk about the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers. Let's talk about some defensive guys. It's just a little bit more fun. Let's keep it fresh. So for
it's
me,
a great defensive class.
And it really is.
Defensive class.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the defense is leading the way as far as talent goes in this year's class. And to your point, to go into Devin Lloyd from Utah, the linebacker that I want to talk about here. This is someone that I didn't watch over the summer. It's a stacked linebacker class. There were so many names, and I just, quite frankly, didn't get to them. And this is someone who has, for me, watching him live a couple times now, like you mentioned, Joe, USC this week. I watched some of the BYU game a few weeks ago, and he just stood out. He looks like he's playing at a different speed, and that's both against the run. I've seen him, make numerous stops in the run game. Week in and week out, he rushes the passer very well. You said 2 sacks. I think he's had probably triple that as far as quarterback hurries. He seems to always be in there when he is blitzing, either through the A gap or off the edge. And then in coverage, I think is his strongest strongest attribute to him. Where you said he had 2 interceptions. This guy just seems to always be in the right position, doesn't give up big plays in coverage. I think the longest play on the 2021 season to this point through 5 games is 14 yards. And that was a play where it wasn't even really his guy that, going back and watching some of that early tape this year. So, a big fan of Devin Lloyd, obviously with a passing league in the NFL, coverage at the linebacker position. We've seen it with Pete Warner. We've seen it with some of these guys. It's really important for them to be able to cover the pass. But in that same train of thought, he's done such a great job against the run. So this is someone that I just feel like is easy projection. He kind of checks all the boxes at the linebacker position. He displays athleticism as a run and chase linebacker in the run game, as well as, has the play strength to hold up at the point of attack when offensive linemen come to him at the second level.
I think he's a different breed from what Utah usually has at linebacker too, because if you look from a few years back, they had Chase Hansen, they had Cody Barton, who's I think is still on the Seattle Seahawks backup linebacker. Yeah. They had Francis Bernard at linebacker a couple years ago as well, and they're all kind of the same dude. Like Chase Hansen had a little bit of a safety background, so he was a little more of a flexible mover, but like They are all downhill, a little slightly undersized guys that really are going to show up in the run game, but like they're not dynamic athletes in any sense, but they're always well coached. So now you have Devin Lloyd, who is the complete opposite. He's 6'3", with vines, 235 pounds, very athletic, very loose, and he's still coached by the same coaching staff, Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley, who is one of the best defensive tandems as far as coaches in all of college football. Utah has always coached phenomenally well on the defensive side of the football. So when you take that defensive style and that discipline as a linebacker and you mold it into what Devin Lloyd has from a physical perspective, this kid could be the first linebacker off the board. It's wide open right now. He has that type of upside. He has that length. He has the ability, I believe, to play Mike, Sam, Will. Like, I feel like he's a guy that can play multiple positions in the defense, and he has a smooth athletic background on top of the disciplined style that Utah usually plays. I'm in on Devin Lloyd, top 50 pick.
Yeah.
So similar to what we had on the last show, we had a lot of guys that were on teams that were struggling and that were playing underwhelming, that were under that conversation of underwhelming guys. And the flip side of that, pretty much all of the guys we're bringing up today are players that are on teams that are just out of nowhere, really explosive, doing really, really well. And we've got another defensive player on a team that has been really resilient on defense. They probably could have won against Iowa this past weekend if it wasn't for the injury that Sean Clifford ended up dealing with, and that kind of impacted the outcome indirectly. But Ryan, you want to talk about Jaquan Brisker, who is the 6'1", 200-pound safety for Penn State. So far this year, he has 25 tackles and 2 interceptions. They've got a lot of dudes on that defense, again, because they recruit so many athletes, it seems like, and a lot of those guys are developing pretty well. Why did you pick Brisker, and where do you think he fits in this really, really already talented safety group?
I just noticed that the last 4 guys we're going to talk about are all Big Ten guys. A little bit of a run here.
It's a Big Ten podcast.
Apparently, it is a big locked on Big Ten. I don't know. Oh, not locked on. Sorry, believe in Big Ten.
I gotta bleep that out.
Network.
We got Ryan with the verbal gaff. We got Alex over here completely almost knocking his computer over. No, I'm leaving it in when you guys make mistakes.
Hey man, no shame in our past, Joe. We worked in locked on.
Yeah, I know.
It's no big deal.
I'm giving Alex more crap than you, though, because he completely almost just knocked his whole setup over.
That would have been way better. I mean, we're on video, so that would have been fantastic.
Yeah, everyone saw it.
Well, shout out to Alex as he's about to knock everything over, because I think Alex did talk about Jaquan Brisker a couple weeks ago, and I think I put the comparison of Adrian Amos on him, and I still like that comp. I really do. And what's really cool about Brisker is he had some hype last year. He decides to come back. He actually had a Senior Bowl invite last year. He decides to still come back without the extra COVID year. And I thought, and he's listed at 6'1", kind of like you said, Joe, but I mean, sites and schools always list guys a little bigger. But then I see Blesswood. I'm like, he is a legit 6'1" 3/8" and 203 pounds. I'm like, okay, he's got some size to him. And I watched the Iowa game this week, and this was my first time watching a live game this season. I've seen, some cut-ups and some replays of games. This is my first time watching live action and seeing the impact. This kid, man, run game, pass game, he's all over the place from Penn State. He's a lot better than what I thought of him as over the summer. I thought he was a all-around solid player over the summer. I think he excels in multiple areas now, and he made a couple plays in that game, a pass breakup, playing split field read, and really diagnoses quickly. And he brings the pads in the run game. All around, good football player. I don't think that he's a guy that's going to ever play single high, true free safety type of player. I don't think he's a middle of the field type of guy. But as a split field guy, playing in a cover 2 heavy system, cover 4, whatever it is, playing some match coverage. Like, this kid can play football, man. And I think he's got some size to him. He's got some physicality. Adrian Amos, I'm sticking with it. Again, a little bit of a lazy comp because they both went to Penn State. But I think Jaquan Brisker is a lot better than I thought. And for your question, Joe, of where I think he lines up, I think it's the category you listed here. I think he's a top 100 pick. And before the season started, I would have said 4th to 5th round. I think this kid is a safe top 100 pick who is a starting caliber player down the road.
So, Alex, before you respond and share your thoughts on that, I would like to get a quick don't force comps rating on that out of 10. Adrian Amos, Jaquan Brisker, where do you stand on that?
Let's see. We'll give it a 4. Yeah.
Wow.
I think look.
It's brutal.
Wait. We have to distinguish the scale. What is 10 and what is 1? 10 being the
10's the best.
10 is
like a good comp?
Yeah, 10 out of 10 means it's
okay.
A1 comp. I don't know what scales you're using.
No, I'm thinking of like don't force comps, like how much of a don't force comp situation.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a perfect
if that's the case,
perfect comp.
It's on the other side.
6.
So you think it's a 6.
Same
Okay.
team. It's a little lazy. Come on, Ryan. You've done better. You have to admit you've done better.
Can we go back to my Enagbare, Olivier Vernon comp then instead?
I forgot to get that one. Yeah, wait. What would you grade the? I
like
actually
that
kind of
one.
like that. Yeah,
I'm gonna go 7.8.
7 point.
Oddly
We're
specific.
talking decimals here. We're talking
Yeah.
decimals.
We really shouldn't.
two
be doing
sig
a whole
figs for this.
All right.
Yeah.
Alex, you make a comp now, and I need to get something good here.
All right. We'll work on it.
Let's get your thoughts on Brisker though.
Okay, so for Brisker, the biggest thing that stands out, like I said, I talked about him a couple weeks ago. 3 big games he's played this year to this point. At Wisconsin, that was a high leverage game to start off the year, against Auburn, and then at Iowa here. In those games, Ryan talked about how he's been so well-rounded. Let's talk about the passing game. He's had in those 3 games, 3 PBUs, 2 interceptions. So he's been able to show up in coverage, time and time again, especially in the big games. On the season, I think he's allowed six receiving yards. So passing game is not a question, and then I think he gets to pair that with 7 or 8, if memory serves, run stop. So the guy just kind of does it all for that defense. He's kind of the focal point and kind of the guy that sits in the middle. Like you said, he's not going to be the guy on the roof, the guy on the ceiling, playing single high, but this is someone that you want playing down on the football, kind of playing in that box safety role, making plays at the line of scrimmage in swing play, in the run game and swing pass, screen pass situations, but allow him to play in coverage quite a bit as well, because I think he's special in both. Top 50 guy for me.
Wow.
So our one offensive player that we have on here, which I don't know how I didn't notice this before we started recording, but we've got one offensive player, and surprise, it's a guy that Alex had claimed a while ago, and it's a guy that he has continually talked about as he's just ascended into a fantastically talented player. You could probably guess, yes, it is Michigan State's Kenneth Walker III, 5'10", 210-pound running back. And he has had some stupid performances thus far, already at 913 yards and 9 touchdowns, 2 200-yard rushing games. I don't know how anyone's stopping this kid, and he's a big reason why Michigan State has been as good as they are this year. So, Alex, tell us a little bit more about Kenneth Walker that you haven't really already talked about, which you've done a lot, and we need a comp so that Ryan can rate you.
All right, yeah. So Kenneth Walker for me is someone I came into the season really high on, as we all know at this point. This is the one I get to hang my hat on to this point in the season. Biggest question mark with him is his work in the pass game. I thought we were starting to get some light a couple weeks ago when he had 3 receptions in the single game, but he just seems to not be a focal point in that offense's passing game. But that's not to take anything away from him. He's been running all over folks. Northwestern, good defense, running all over him. Miami, Nebraska, all the way through the schedule. I think he's averaging 7.1 yards a carry, 9 touchdowns. This guy has has put himself in the Heisman conversation as Michigan State's undefeated to this point. I think they're ranked 11th as the AP poll came out today as we're recording this.
That sounds about right.
10th, 11th, or somewhere right in there. So Michigan State's
yeah.
going to have the opportunity. Kenneth Walker's going to have the opportunity to build on that in a Big Ten where I feel like they're going to beat each other up. Comp off the dome, Chris Carson.
Ew.
Does that size comparison work? I thought Carson's heavier. Am I? Because Kenneth Walker's 210. I don't know if that works.
Ryan,
wait,
what would you rate it?
1 to 10?
Yeah.
Scale 1 to 10. I give that about a -6.
Yes, that's Ryan. Aren't you a math teacher?
Yes. Comp for him. I would say stylistically, Aaron Jones would be an okay.
Okay.
That one I like better than Chris Carson.
Okay.
like
I don't think he's quite as.
I'm trying to
explosive as
think.
Aaron
I'm trying to think
Jones,
of someone
but,
that's not as good in the passing game. That's where Chris Carson came from.
But Alex, like, one's a guy's like a downhill bruiser, and the other one's
Right.
like a shifty, like.
I just
make
don't
you
think
miss
Kenneth Walker's
type of
big enough
guy.
to be Chris Carson. Like I feel like Carson's a little bit more
Guys, this
behind
isn't
his
my
pads.
game. We shouldn't be doing this.
Too
Yeah,
bad.
You're
This is the
embarrassing
Don't
Alex
Force
right now.
Comps podcast.
I think it's like
Chris Carson's
Chuba
what,
Hubbard, maybe.
220?
Chuba Hubbard, maybe.
Okay,
something like that.
no,
Wait, let
he's
me
not
look at
fast.
Well, I
Chris
mean,
Carson.
also Kenneth Walker is not 210. Like, let's be honest about this.
You think he's
but-
heavier?
That's probably
No, I
true.
think he's lower. I think he's like.
Yeah, I
285.
think he's like.
Yeah,
probably-
so that's my point is regardless, he looks skinny. Chris Carson looks bigger, and he's 5'11", 223. So like that, that's my, because Chris Carson, again, he's more of like behind his pads. I feel like I haven't really seen that from Kenneth Walker.
Mhm.
I don't know. Ryan, what do you think of Walker, though, before we get to your last surprise player?
He's growing on me. I think he's explosive in short spaces. I don't see a second gear, but I see really good patience, and I see some explosiveness in tight areas. That's kind of why Aaron Jones came to mind just a little bit stylistically. Like, Aaron Jones doesn't have dynamite speed, but like he, again, in tight spaces, he can really explode and take advantage of a crease, at least to create an explosive play. And I think that he has that. I think that he has good contact balance. I would say he's got better wiggle than he has true contact balance. Like, I don't see him running through tackles. I see him making tacklers kind of slip off of him, if that makes sense. I'd see a little more of a quick shake than a guy that's like legitimately running through arm tackles. But he's growing on me, man. I'm not quite to top 100 yet, just because I want to see what type of athlete he is. I really do kind of want to see that. But Alex can take his victory lap for now because he's been arguably the best running back in college football so far. So,
Maybe a Heisman favorite if
could be.
Michigan State continues to win football games. I don't think that's
No-
out of the question at all.
no quarterbacks really in the race right now. So,
Yeah.
like, somebody's going to win. But maybe Bijan, I guess, has a claim, but even he just lost to Oklahoma. So,
Right, and you also keep getting the Matt Corral name thrown out there, which something kind of justified, but no one has yet to really stand out in that grouping. We've got Shocker, another freaking defensive player, and Ryan, you picked a Michigan guy, yet another Big Ten player, David Ojabo. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but the thing I'm not mispronouncing is the fact that this man, it says he is from Aberdeen, Scotland, which is pretty cool. And I'm sure you've got a quick tidbit on that, but 6'5", 250 pounds so far this year, 4.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, and also 2 quarterback hits. So let's hear a little bit about Ojabo.
yeah, I think from my knowledge, I think Ojabo was very late to the game, and I'm not sure exactly how long he spent overseas, but obviously he was overseas for a while, and he's a New Jersey guy now, Joe, and he played at Blair Academy, which is a very good high school here in New Jersey, and he is a guy that was, to my knowledge, if I remember correctly, he was a little late to football. I don't think he played until he was in high school, maybe midway through high school, and this kid is an athletic freak. And the reason that I picked him was actually, shout out to Corey Kennan on Twitter. He's been pounding Ojabo now for like 2 weeks. And I had heard the name. I know the number. Like, I knew 55. I saw him play a little bit. But I went back and because of Corey, and I watched the Washington game. And while everybody was fangirling over Aiden Hutchinson, I'm here to tell you, man, Ojabo gave Jackson Kirkland as many fits not many, but like in his limited reps, he gave Jackson Kirkland a lot of fits just as Hutchinson did. Now, he's a much different player than Hutchinson. He's listed at 6'5", 250 pounds, looks pretty legit, looks like he has long arms, and he has a toolbox to him. He has a plan, which is weird for a guy that is still relatively raw, hasn't played a ton at Michigan, didn't play a ton in high school, but he has a toolbox. He has a good understanding of how to attack an outside track and has some inside counters to him. He's got a little bit of bend. He's an explosive athlete. Lots to like about him. To put into perspective, he was a 100-meter state qualifier, I believe, at Blair Academy. Ran 10.9 at defensive end, that's flying, man.
Stupid.
Yeah, it's really good. Sub 11. Everybody always makes like, oh, wow, this wide receiver ran a 10.8 in high school. I'm like, that's actually not that great of a time for a wide receiver, but like 10.9 for a defensive end, that is scooping, man. Yeah. So to put that in perspective, this kid has the raw tools. He's starting to figure it out. Corey thinks that he could be a better player than Aiden Hutchinson, and I'm not dispelling that.
That's hot.
They're very different.
That's
Aiden
spicy.
Hutchinson for me is like length, alignment versatile, scheme diverse type of player. Ojabo is a traditional 4-3 defensive end, put your hand in the dirt, outside track winner. So they're very different football players, but Ojabo could be a big guy, man, that like more people need to start talking about. Aiden Hutchinson's kind of stolen the show, but number 55 can play some ball, man. Just keep an eye on him.
Before we get to you, Alex, I have a really stupid question. Does he have a Scottish accent? Because that would make me really happy for some reason.
I've never heard him interview, so I'm not sure.
Damn it. Okay, I'm going to look it up after because I would be enamored by the fact that there is a guy with a Scottish accent that is going to play in the NFL. I don't think there's anybody else that's done that, except for the guy from Scotland who is a kicker. I forget his name. But Alex, go ahead.
No, as far as Ojabo goes, like I haven't put too many eyes on him. There's a few Michigan State defenders that kind of catch your eye when watching them live. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson being one, but Daxton Hill, who's someone that I wanted to talk about a little bit, has really impressed me to this point. So haven't watched too much Ojabo, but from everything that Ryan says and from looking at kind of the advanced statistics on him to this point, seems like he's found some success on the opposite side of Hutchinson, who gets a lot of notoriety.
Did Alex just sneak in another guy? Was that a fourth guy that he wanted?
Yeah, you know how I do.
You guys are freaking sneaky. I'm gonna start muting you guys when you start sneaking in more than the limit. We're gonna put you in like a you ever guys watch Around the Horn where they would put guys in timeout and they couldn't talk?
Right.
I'll figure out a way to do that.
Can you mute other people on this? Is that
wait, watch. I just muted Ryan and I can't hear him.
Good choice.
All right, I fixed Ryan. So Alex, let's get to our last player as we're making pretty good time here, which is a first on this podcast. Riley Moss, Iowa defensive back, who was a part of a huge victory for Iowa this past weekend. A game that I still stand by. I think if Sean Clifford finished the game, Penn State wins that football game, but circumstantially,
first time that's ever been said. It's the first time that's ever been said.
I don't think anyone would have thought that would have been said, but it's the truth because I can't even think of the name of the backup because I couldn't hear the TV at the bar I was at.
He's a New Jersey guy. Jaquan Roberson. Come on, man.
He was still terrible. He was still absolutely terrible. If Clifford doesn't come back, they're screwed. But Iowa, on the other hand, continues to look defensively dominant, probably like one of the top 5 best defenses in the country right now. And for Riley Moss to be a part of that conversation makes a ton of sense as a potential riser. So far, he has 23 tackles on the season and then 4 interceptions. Wow, that's a pretty good stat line, for a DB so far this season. So why did you go with Riley Moss, Alex?
Yeah, I think you're underselling this defense and the success they've had by saying top 5. I think I'd go on record to say they're number 2.
I thought it was being a little. Yeah, I thought it was being a little soft. I think that 2 is probably right. They're going to be ranked that high too. So
yeah, and it's 2021, and the top 2 teams in the country are the top 2 defenses in the country. So a little bit different, shifting gears from the trends as far as offensive minds go and offensive firepower in college football now. But to Riley Moss, Iowa's defense, like you said, had a lot of success over the course of this year, bringing them to that number 2 ranking. And it's much to do about the ability to turn the ball over. That's something that they lead the nation in, if memory serves, at least going into the week they did. And look, 4 interceptions, Riley Moss. This is someone that I had no idea who he was coming into the year, and now he's on the radar and being talked about quite a bit because of his ability to turn the football over in primetime situations. Had a good game as well yesterday against Penn State. So Riley Moss isn't someone I'd be willing to say is top 100. There's more to it than what we've seen in live action. We got to really dive into him since this is someone that's completely green to me. But this is someone that at least has put his name on the radar to say, hey, I'm somebody too.
Yeah, and Riley, unfortunately, on his interception this week, he did get hurt in the game, so I don't know how serious he was, but he was kind of playing cover 3, and he kind of came over top and had a really nice interception. It was not a well-thrown football, but nice interception. 10 interceptions in his career as well, which is a really nice number. So he has ball skills. I think Jim Nagy posted something that he was a 13-something 110 high hurdler in high school as well. So, dude can move a little bit, and he's over 6 foot. He's got a little bit of length to him. Not the longest arms in the world, but he's got height. He's got athleticism. Lots to like with Riley Moss for sure. Hopefully he is not long-term injured because we actually had him on the College Gridiron Showcase invite list that's coming out here pretty soon and on the watch list. And I had to tell the guys, like, there's no way we're getting Riley Moss. Like, there's zero chance we're getting Riley Moss.
That's going to be it for this this discussion of surprise players so far during this draft cycle. So, no surprise here for our next. I think we're going to do 2 episodes for the next 2. We're going to do a mock draft. It's time for a mock draft. We've been fiending for one. We know that our listeners who kind of tend to dissipate during the college football season and come back with a fiending need for draft coverage at the end of the season. If we do a mock draft, you guys are going to be juiced up for it. So we will be doing a 2-part mock draft. You'll be able to watch the video, which will actually have the mock draft simulator rolling while we're doing it. Maybe we'll use Pro Football Network for that one. Maybe that'll be a good
RisenDraft.com.
No, yeah, we'll obviously be using RisenDraft.com.
Serious for a second.
Mock draft simulator. No, but if you want to do your own mock draft, seriously, go to RisenDraft.com. It has not only a database to pull information from while you do the mock draft, but then you could do the mock draft on the website. Best website out there for draft coverage. No fluff, unlike some of these other sites that are just fantasy and shoving all that crap down your throat that's nothing to do with the NFL draft. But hit the subscribe button on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio version, you don't want to miss our first mock draft of the cycle because we are going to be coming at you hard with that one. Enjoy the rest of your week, folks, and enjoy some of the interviews that we have coming up.